It was a cold, rainy night in late October, the kind of night where the darkness seems to swallow everything whole. Tom had just finished a long shift at the hospital and was looking forward to nothing more than a hot shower and a good night's sleep. His apartment was in an old building downtown, with creaky floors and thin walls, but it was home. As he parked his car and made his way inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Tom lived on the third floor, and as he climbed the stairs, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing behind him. He paused and turned around, but the stairwell was empty. Chalk it up to exhaustion, he thought, and continued to his apartment. Once inside, Tom locked the door and double-checked it, a habit he'd picked up after a recent string of break-ins in the area. He headed to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and let the steam envelop him, hoping to wash away the unease that clung to him. After his shower, Tom threw on some sweatpants and a t-shirt and settled into his bed. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through social media, trying to unwind. That's when he heard a soft, almost imperceptible knock on his door. He froze, listening intently. The knock came again, a bit louder this time. Tom's mind raced. It was nearly midnight. Who would be knocking at this hour? He got up, his heart pounding in his chest, and approached the door. "Who is it?" he called out, his voice shaky. No answer. "Who's there?" he repeated, louder this time. Still no answer. Tom looked through the peephole but saw nothing. He debated with himself whether or not to open the door. Maybe it's just a prank, he thought. He decided to ignore it and went back to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. The unsettling feeling of being watched returned, stronger than before. A sudden noise from the living room made him jump. It sounded like something heavy being dragged across the floor. Tom grabbed the baseball bat he kept under his bed and slowly made his way towards the living room. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the curtains. As he reached the living room, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The armchair by the window was turned to face him, though he distinctly remembered it facing the TV when he left it. His pulse quickened as he scanned the room for any signs of an intruder. Then he noticed the closet door. It was slightly ajar, and he could see something moving inside. Summoning all his courage, Tom gripped the bat tightly and approached the closet. He took a deep breath and yanked the door open, ready to swing. But there was nothing. Just his coats and a few boxes. Feeling foolish, Tom closed the closet door and decided he was just being paranoid. He went back to his bedroom and locked the door behind him, determined to get some sleep. But as he lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. Just as he was about to drift off, he heard it again, the soft knock on his door, followed by a whisper. "Tom, let me in." His heart pounded in his chest as he sat up, trying to make sense of what he heard. He checked his phone to see if he had any missed calls or messages, but there was nothing. Then, the whisper came again, louder this time. "Tom, please, let me in." He couldn't ignore it anymore. With trembling hands, he grabbed his bat and slowly approached the door. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice quivering. "Tom, it's me." "Let me in," the voice replied, eerily familiar but distorted, like a recording played at the wrong speed. He looked through the peephole again, but saw only darkness. Panic set in as the knocking grew more insistent and the voice more desperate. "Tom, please, let me in." Summoning every ounce of bravery, Tom unlocked the door and threw it open, bat raised high. But there was no one there, just the empty hallway stretching out into the darkness. He slammed the door shut, bolted it, and backed away, his mind racing. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw a text message from an unknown number. It read, "Why didn't you let me in, Tom?" His blood ran cold as he stared at the message, his hands shaking. He dropped the phone and ran to his bedroom, locking the door behind him. He sat on the bed, bat in hand, and waited, every nerve in his body on edge. The knocking didn't come again that night, but Tom never slept. He spent the rest of the night sitting in his bed, listening to the silence and wondering who or what had been at his door. And why did it know his name? The next morning, he packed his bags and left the apartment, vowing never to return. Some things, he decided, were better left unknown. My friend Mark and I loved exploring abandoned places. There was something thrilling about stepping into a space that had been forgotten by time, where the air was thick with mystery. We had explored old factories, crumbling houses, and even an abandoned amusement park. But nothing could have prepared us for what we experienced at the old Maplewood Hotel. The Maplewood Hotel had been closed for over 30 years. It was a massive, decaying building that stood on the outskirts of town, shrouded in trees and silence. Rumors about the hotel were plenty whispers of suicides, murders, and disappearances. Naturally, Mark and I were intrigued. One Friday evening, we decided to check it out. Armed with flashlights, a couple of cameras, and a digital recorder, we sneaked past the rusted gates and made our way inside. The lobby was as grand as it was eerie. Dusty chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their crystals casting strange reflections in the dim light. Torn wallpaper peeled from the walls, and old furniture lay scattered, as if a storm had blown through the place. We explored the first couple of floors without incident. Our excitement grew with each step, fueled by the sense of the unknown. Then we reached the third floor. The atmosphere changed. It felt colder, heavier. Mark, ever the bravest, suggested we check out room 302. According to local legends, it was the room where a young woman named Emily had taken her own life after her fiancé left her. The door to room 302 was slightly ajar. As we pushed it open, it creaked loudly, sending chills down my spine. The room was dark, save for the moonlight filtering through the dirty window. A musty smell permeated the air. We stepped inside, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The room was mostly empty, except for a large, antique mirror on the wall and an old wooden chair in the corner. Mark set up the recorder and started asking questions, trying to communicate with any spirits that might be present. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then we heard a faint, almost imperceptible sobbing. We froze, our eyes wide, and listened. The sound seemed to be coming from the direction of the mirror. Mark, being the thrill seeker he was, walked over to it and shined his flashlight at the surface. For a moment, we saw nothing but our reflections. Suddenly, the sobbing grew louder, more intense. It was coming from behind the mirror. Mark reached out and touched the glass. As soon as his fingers made contact, the mirror fogged up, and we saw words being written from the inside, "Help me." We stumbled back, our hearts pounding. The sobbing turned into a wail, echoing through the room. The temperature dropped further, and our breath became visible. We had to get out of there. Mark grabbed the recorder, and we bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind us. We didn't stop running until we were outside, gasping for air. In the safety of Mark's car, we played back the recording. It started with Mark's questions, followed by the sobbing. But then, there was something else, a voice, faint and filled with despair, whispering, "Emily." We never went back to the Maplewood Hotel. That night changed everything for us. We still explored abandoned places, but the thrill was different, now tainted by the memory of room 302 and the desperate spirit of Emily. Some places, we realized, are abandoned for a reason, and some spirits, once disturbed, never rest.